Picture a person who craves love just as deeply as anyone else. They dream about closeness, about finally settling into a calm rhythm with another soul. They long to be picked, wanted, truly noticed. But the second that love starts feeling real, something inside them reacts like a threat approaching. Their mind might go silent, but underneath everything is firing alarms. Their chest tightens, their thoughts start spiraling, and suddenly the urge to create space outweighs the urge to stay close. So if you have ever wondered why someone pulls back right when things are getting good, stay with me here, because this might completely change how you see it. What if that distance was never really about disliking you? What if their quietness was never indifference at all? What if stepping back was not proof they do not care, but evidence that closeness simply overwhelms their nervous system before they can process it? Here is the piece almost nobody notices. Someone avoidant usually is not running from love itself. They are running from the fear that love might cost them their peace, their sense of control, their freedom, or even their sense of self. Once that hits you, everything starts looking different. And once your understanding shifts, your approach has to shift too. You cannot force someone avoidant to come closer by pushing harder. But there is a way to help them eventually lean in, reach out first, and feel secure enough to take the lead themselves. It does not begin with words or even visible behavior. It begins somewhere underneath all of that. In the body, in felt safety, in the quiet emotional undercurrent between two people. Most of us only judge what is visible on the surface. We notice the avoidant pattern by what is missing. They do not text first. They do not open up quickly. They do not show emotion the way we expect. They hesitate to deepen things, even when it is obvious someone is trying to build something real with them. To outsiders, this can look cold, selfish, even confusing. People assume they are detached or just not invested enough. But that read is usually too simple. What looks like rejection is often self-protection. What appears as distance is frequently a nervous system trying not to go under. Someone avoidant typically is not avoiding you specifically. They are avoiding the feeling of being emotionally exposed without enough internal safety first. That is an entirely different thing. Every single person is wired for connection, even the guarded ones, even the quiet ones, even those who seem impossible to read. The pull toward bonding is natural, but so is the pull toward self-protection. And when those two instincts collide, protection usually wins out first. That is exactly why intimacy can feel so tangled for someone with avoidant tendencies. Closeness might not register as warmth right away. It can feel risky, like losing control, like pressure is about to follow. So instead of asking why they will not make the first move, ask something deeper. What does closeness actually feel like inside their body? If intimacy registers as danger, then pulling away will feel like relief. And as long as distance keeps feeling like relief, they will keep retreating to it until the connection itself starts to feel genuinely safe. Safety is the piece everyone skips over. People focus on honesty, effort, texting, commitment, warmth, visible action. But the avoidant nervous system is quietly asking something more fundamental before any of that can land. Am I actually safe here? Not safe in some logical sense, not safe because someone insists you can trust me, but safe in a felt bodily way. Safe in tone, in pacing, in energy, in the overall emotional climate of the relationship. Without that felt sense of safety, nothing really opens up. Someone can genuinely want love and still shut down the moment it gets close. They can miss you and still avoid your messages. They can care deeply and still vanish for a stretch. That contradiction hurts, but it is real. Picture trying to grow something in concrete. No matter how strong the seed is, it will not take root there. It needs softer soil. For an avoidant person, emotional softness means no hidden pressure, no emotional ambush, no sudden expectation to perform closeness on demand. It means they can actually breathe inside the relationship. It means being near you does not feel like walking into a trap. And that kind of safety almost never gets built through big declarations. It is not created by explaining your love more forcefully. It is built quietly, through consistency, through staying calm, through not treating every silence like a crisis, through not trying to control how every interaction turns out, through being steady enough that they never feel cornered. That is when something inside them finally starts to ease. Not because they were talked into it, but because their system begins registering that closeness might not be dangerous this time around. And that small shift is where real change begins. This is also why pressure almost always backfires. Many people believe the solution is to chase harder, explain more, ask more often, confront repeatedly, or demand clarity until they finally get the answer they want. The more cornered they feel, the further they retreat. The more emotionally trapped they feel, the harder their protective instincts kick in. They go quiet, they get vague, they need even more space than before. Then the other person panics, pushes even harder, and the whole cycle just gets worse. Pay close attention here because it matters. An avoidant person rarely moves closer under pressure. They move closer when closeness starts to feel like something they are choosing, not something being demanded of them. Let that really sink in. Connection has to feel chosen, never forced. When you stop trying to pull them toward you, sometimes that is exactly when they feel safe enough to turn around on their own. That is the paradox at the heart of it. Their need for independence usually is not arrogance. It is often a survival mechanism built over years. Sometimes going back to childhood, sometimes shaped by past relationships where closeness came bundled with criticism, shame, guilt, unpredictability, or too many demands. So in their mind, freedom has become tied to safety and space has become tied to control. But if you build a connection where they are allowed to move at their own human pace, where they do not feel emotionally hunted, they start to experience something unfamiliar. They start realizing that closeness and freedom can actually coexist. And once that happens, you will notice small signals, an unprompted message, a suggestion to meet up, a softer tone, them asking about your day, a rare flash of real honesty. These moments might seem minor from where you are standing, but to them, they are massive. Listen for these moments, they are the real tell. A lot of avoidant people grew up learning that emotional closeness was not always something they could count on. Maybe love came with strings attached. Maybe being open led to feeling embarrassed. Maybe asking for something led to disappointment. Maybe their home life was so unpredictable that the only way to feel any stability was to become entirely self-sufficient. So they trained themselves to manage emotion by retreating inward. Distance became their way of regulating themselves. Space became the place they could finally exhale and feel in control again. That wiring does not disappear just because they meet someone who genuinely loves them. It takes time, repetition, calm, and enough consistent moments for their brain to slowly rewrite its old understanding of intimacy. This is exactly why intensity and drama almost never fix avoidant behavior. But calm does, predictability does, steady emotional presence does. Once the brain starts associating closeness with peace rather than chaos, something shifts naturally. The avoidant person stops reaching out only out of loneliness or guilt. They start reaching out because the connection itself starts to feel light, safe, easy to breathe in. Their body stops treating intimacy like a five-alarm fire. They begin experimenting with new behavior in tiny increments, sharing a bit more, staying a little longer, replying a little quicker, thinking of you without that thought feeling like it is drowning them. And yes, this can be a slow process, but slow does not mean it is not genuine. Slow does not mean indifference. Often slow simply means a deep-rooted fear is being rewired in real time. Rush it, and you usually tear that wound back open. Respect it, and you help create exactly the kind of environment where they can start behaving differently. So if you are trying to build something with someone who leans avoidant, pause before wondering why they are not moving toward you fast enough. Ask instead, does their nervous system actually feel safe around me? Do they feel emotionally free when they are with me, or do they feel watched? Do they feel accepted, or do they feel managed? Does my presence feel calming to them, or does it feel like quiet pressure? Because without that deep sense of safety, no tactic is going to hold up long term. Avoidant people do not typically respond to force. They respond to peace. They respond to emotional room that does not punish them for needing it. And once peace becomes the underlying tone of your connection, movement starts happening on its own. Their distance starts making more sense too. You stop labeling every pause as rejection. You stop treating every moment something came in too strong as something moving too fast. Their need for space is not always punishment. Sometimes it is recovery. Sometimes their body is just saying, I need a minute to breathe so I do not completely shut down. That reframe changes how you respond entirely. Instead of chasing their distance out of fear, you learn to meet it with steadiness. That does not mean abandoning your own needs. It does not mean tolerating scraps, confusion, or harmful treatment forever. It means you stop reacting from panic. You stop turning every bit of space into an interrogation. You choose groundedness over chasing them down. And oddly enough, that groundedness is often exactly what brings them back with more openness, more honesty, more willingness than before. Stay with this part because it is where things really start to shift. When an avoidant person withdraws, the honest truth underneath it is usually simpler than people assume. They are not saying, I do not care. They are saying, this is too much for me right now. Their independence works like emotional oxygen. When they feel crowded, pushed, or overwhelmed, it registers internally as suffocation. So they step back to find their footing again. The unfortunate part is that the other person often reads that retreat as abandonment and responds with even more urgency, which only makes the avoidant feel more pressure, tightening the whole cycle further. This is exactly why space, even though it stings, can become the very thing that creates movement. When space gets met with anger, guilt, accusations, or emotional overwhelm, it turns into a battlefield. But when it is met with understanding, it transforms. It stops being a wall and starts becoming a bridge. Listen closely here because this distinction matters. Giving someone space is not the same as emotionally checking out. It is not coldness. It is not some manipulative tactic. It is not pretending you do not care. It means staying present without crowding them. It means being available without becoming intrusive. It means letting the emotional temperature cool enough for something real to breathe again. In that kind of atmosphere, the avoidant person starts to sense that being close to you might not require losing themselves, which is their deepest fear. They start learning that love does not have to mean pressure, control, or chaos. It can include freedom, it can include quiet, it can include room to think. And that changes everything because people naturally move toward what feels safe and freely chosen. We gravitate toward what welcomes us rather than what grabs at us. Once an avoidant person senses that closeness with you will not cost them their peace, their desire wakes up in a completely different way. At that point, initiative stops being something you are begging for. It becomes something they freely offer. You will usually notice this shift first in the small things, which is important because people tend to overlook them. They are sitting around waiting for some big dramatic confession, a sweeping emotional breakthrough, a cinematic moment. But growth in an avoidant person tends to arrive quietly, an unprompted text, a check-in that feels more personal than usual, a conversation that runs longer than it normally would, a gentler tone, a moment where they actually tell you what is going on instead of retreating into distance, a suggestion to meet up that comes entirely from them. None of this is random. These are signals. They mean their system is starting to trust the connection a bit more. They mean safety is taking root. And once that safety starts growing, space itself takes on a different meaning. At first, distance might serve one function only: escape, getting away, regulating, recovering. But over time, if the connection stays emotionally steady, space stops being purely an exit. It becomes reflection. It becomes a place where they can think clearly and come back with more self-awareness. This is one of the real turning points. They are no longer using distance just to flee the bond. They are learning to use it to protect the bond from becoming too overwhelming. That distinction matters a lot. It means they are not simply shutting you out. They are figuring out how to stay connected without buckling under the weight of closeness. Relationships with avoidant people tend to move in waves rather than straight lines. They come closer, then retreat, then come back again, like a tide. If you panic every time the tide pulls out, you generate more fear for both of you. But once you understand the rhythm, you stop trying to freeze the ocean in place. And the less force they feel, the more honestly they tend to return. So the next time that familiar discomfort rises in you as they step back, try something different. Breathe before reacting. Let the silence sit for a moment without rushing to fill it with fear. Do not sprint to close every gap immediately. Do not let your anxiety speak louder than your deeper judgment. In a lot of cases, their nervous system is not ending the connection. It is resetting. It is trying to regain inner balance so closeness can become possible again. What feels like loss in that moment might actually be preparation for a healthier return down the line. And if you can stay calm through that space, you become something genuinely valuable to them, a grounding point, someone their system learns to trust. This is the paradox sitting at the center of all of it. When you stop chasing, you stop feeding their fear. When you stop forcing closeness, you often make real closeness more achievable. When you stop treating every silence as the end of things, you give their own feelings room to surface naturally instead of being crushed under pressure. And when that happens, they do come closer. Not because they were pushed or guilted, but because something in them genuinely wants to. That kind of movement carries weight. It carries sincerity. It carries real willingness behind it. In the end, it is rarely the distance itself that destroys connection. It is fear. Fear closes the heart. Fear distorts meaning. Fear can make two people feel miles apart, even while sitting side by side. And the only thing that genuinely softens fear over time is safety paired with freedom. When both exist together, a connection becomes strong enough to hold real intimacy without either person feeling trapped. This is where emotional neutrality becomes powerful, and it is often misunderstood. A lot of people hear neutrality and assume it means cold, detached, dry, emotionally checked out. Real neutrality is none of that. It is emotional steadiness. It is knowing how to stay grounded when the energy around you gets intense. It is being warm without becoming chaotic. It is having feelings without letting those feelings hijack every word and reaction. For someone avoidant, that kind of emotional balance feels deeply calming. Their system picks up on pressure fast, faster than most people realize. They notice shifts in tone, urgency, tense expressions, repeated questions, emotional heaviness, unspoken expectations. Their body reads all of it quickly because somewhere along the way, emotional intensity probably got tangled up with conflict, criticism, shame, or being overwhelmed. So even small signals can trigger their defenses. A raised voice, tense energy, repeated requests for reassurance, demands for instant answers, all of it can register as unsafe. And the second they feel unsafe, withdrawing starts to feel necessary all over again. That is exactly why neutrality is not a weak response. It is actually a remarkably intelligent one. Without saying much at all, it tells their nervous system, you do not need to defend yourself here. When you meet their withdrawal with calm instead of panic, you communicate something far more powerful than any long conversation could. Your energy says, I am not here to invade your peace. That lowers their need to protect themselves. It turns the emotional volume down. And once the volume drops, they can actually hear their own desire for connection more clearly. Most people respond with urgency the moment they sense an avoidant partner pulling away. They chase reassurance, ask repeatedly what is wrong, try to immediately fix the emotional gap. That is an understandable instinct. But to someone avoidant, urgency often feels like pressure, and pressure feels like losing control. Neutrality breaks that pattern. It signals, I trust this space enough not to attack it. And that creates something called co-regulation, where one calm nervous system helps another start to settle. Over time, this genuinely reshapes the relationship. The avoidant person starts experiencing closeness differently. They stop expecting every serious moment to spiral into emotional chaos. They stop assuming your need for connection automatically erases their right to breathe. They begin taking small risks toward intimacy because the emotional environment around them finally feels safe. This is often when they start initiating more, maybe not in some dramatic flood all at once, but naturally and organically. They reach out because they want to, not because they feel hunted. They check in because it feels good, not because they are being chased. They start trusting that getting closer does not mean signing away their freedom. And that trust makes them far more emotionally available than pressure ever could. Here is the surprising part. Neutrality can actually make you more emotionally magnetic, not less. You become someone steady, someone clear, someone whose presence feels like rest instead of tension. They remember who made them feel safe, who did not punish them for needing space, who stayed calm enough to make closeness feel possible instead of heavy. Real neutrality grows out of self-awareness. You notice what you feel without letting every fear dictate your reaction. You understand your own triggers without making the other person carry them. This matters because avoidant people often fear losing emotional control more than they fear being alone. When they see someone stay soft and steady through tension, their whole picture of intimacy shifts. They start realizing closeness does not have to end in disaster. Sometimes it can just feel peaceful and simple. This shows up in small, ordinary moments, not grand gestures. You pause before reacting. You keep your tone calm when triggered. You let silence exist without treating it as a threat. Instead of, "Why are you doing this again?" try, "I notice you pulling back. I respect that. I am here when you are ready." That kind of language creates room without punishment. Over time, they associate you with calm and safety instead of demand. Their body relaxes around you. They stop bracing for conflict. Their return becomes driven by genuine willingness, not guilt. None of this means erasing your own needs. Emotional safety is not built through self-abandonment. You are not meant to overgive, stay confused, or tolerate behavior that damages your peace. A healthy connection still needs honesty and mutual effort. The difference is in how you express it. Needs wrapped in panic or accusation sound like threat to an avoidant person. Needs expressed with clarity and steadiness are far more likely to land. So boundaries still matter. Calm ones, clear ones. You can say, "I respect your need for space, but I also need communication consistent enough to feel secure." That is grounded, not cold. And grounded energy works better than pressure ever does. As that fear eases, something new can stir. Not the urge to flee, but the desire to actually move toward you and take the lead. This is usually what people are hoping for. Initiation, openness, real closeness. It happens, but only after enough lived evidence builds that the connection is not a trap. They lean in with more courage. Even if their pace stays measured, their effort becomes visible and their presence less guarded. Watch the quality of the movement, not the speed. A small, sincere reach from an avoidant person can mean more than a dramatic gesture from anyone else. Lasting change comes through repetition, not one perfect conversation, but moments where the nervous system learns, "I can be close and still be okay." That lesson turns silence into thoughtfulness, space into reflection, hesitation into courage. So here is the core of it. You do not draw an avoidant person closer by overpowering their defenses. You become a place where those defenses do not have to work so hard. You stay steady, clear, and emotionally responsible. You stop mistaking pressure for passion and panic for love. Calm is not an absence of feeling. It is feeling that has matured enough to let trust grow. As trust builds, the avoidant person feels less alone inside themselves. They start believing someone can love them without crowding them, know them without controlling them. That is when their body stops bracing, their instinct to retreat loses power, and their own desire starts leading them back to you. Not because you chased them, but because you made closeness safe enough to choose. So next time you want to push, pause. Next time silence scares you, breathe. Next time distance shows up, ask what safety might be missing before assuming the worst. Sometimes what looks like withdrawal is part of the path back. And when peace replaces pressure, when freedom sits beside care, even the most guarded heart can step forward and meet love with open hands.